10,000 men, 25,000 invaders. One afternoon that changes everything. You know the legend. Heroic Greeks, impossible odds. Victory nobody saw coming. But what actually happened on that coastal plain 42 kilometers outside Athens in September 490 BC is more brutal and more brilliant than any story. The Persians owned half the known world. Their army had crushed cities from Egypt to the Indus. They expected Marathon to be another clean sweep. Instead, they ran into Miltiades. This is the battle where democracy got its first real test, where a bunch of citizen soldiers with day jobs stopped the largest empire on earth, where tactical genius beat overwhelming force. The details matter. The numbers matter. Because this wasn't mythology. This was real men making impossible choices with everything on the line. The Persian king Darius I didn't wake up one morning and decide to invade Greece for fun. Athens started this, 499 BC. Greek cities in Ionia, that's the western coast of modern Turkey, rose up against Persian rule. The Ionians hated the tyrants Persia installed to control them. They wanted their freedom back. So they asked mainland Greece for help. Most cities said no. Athens sent 20 ships. Eretria sent 5. 25 ships total. That's all it took to earn Darius's permanent hatred. The joint force sailed to Sardis. That's the Persian provincial capital in Lydia. They marched inland, took the lower city, burned it to the ground. Then Persian cavalry chased them back to the coast. At the Battle of Ephesus, the Greeks got hammered. But the damage was done. A foreign power had torched a Persian city. Darius didn't forget. By 493 BC, he'd crushed the Ionian revolt completely. Miletus, the rebel capital, got sacked so brutally that Athens banned a play about it because audiences couldn't stop weeping. Now Darius had a choice. Let Athens get away with burning Sardis? Not a chance. Herodotus says Darius ordered a servant to tell him 3 times every day, "Master, remember the Athenians." Whether that's true or propaganda doesn't matter. What matters is, Darius built an invasion force specifically to punish Athens and Eretria, and to secure the western edge of his empire permanently. 492 BC, first invasion attempt. Mardonius, Darius' son-in-law, led a combined land and sea force through Thrace and Macedonia. He resubjugated Thrace, made Macedonia a full client state, then a storm off Mount Athos wrecked the Persian fleet. Campaign over. But Persia controlled more territory than before. The next attempt would be bigger, 490 BC. Darius sent Datis, a Median admiral and Artaphernes, son of the satrap of Lydia, with 600 ships. The force carried between 25,000 and 30,000 troops. Some estimates say higher. The mission had 3 objectives. Punish Naxos for resisting Persian assault in 499 BC. Subjugate the Cyclades Islands. Destroy Eretria and Athens. They sailed across the Aegean. Island after island submitted without a fight. The Persians landed on Euboea in midsummer. They besieged Eretria. 7 days. The city held. Then someone inside opened the gates. Eretria fell. The Persians enslaved the survivors and burned the temples. Every Athenian watching from across the strait knew they were next. The Persian fleet crossed to Attica. They landed at Marathon. Why Marathon? Herodotus gives 3 reasons. Close to Eretria, short supply line. Good cavalry terrain, the plain is flat and wide. And the third reason, he doesn't say out loud, but everyone understood. Hippias was with them. Hippias, the exiled Athenian tyrant, son of Pisistratus, the man Athens kicked out 15 years earlier when they established democracy. Hippias knew the ground. He guided the Persians to the one spot where their cavalry could dominate, and where his old supporters might still rally to him. Athens had a decision to make. Wait behind the city walls, march to Marathon, and block the exits from the plain. The 10 generals split 5 to 5. Callimachus, the war archon, held the deciding vote. This is where Miltiades stepped up. Miltiades the Younger, son of Cimon Coelemos, member of the Philade clan, Olympic chariot racing family. He'd ruled as tyrant of the Thracian Chersonese for years before fleeing back to Athens in 493 BC when the Persians retook the region. Athens put him on trial immediately for tyranny. He defended himself by saying he'd fought Persian expansion and acted in Greek interests. They acquitted him. His knowledge of Persian tactics was too valuable to waste. Miltiades told Callimachus that waiting in Athens would be fatal. A siege would split the city. Pro-Persian factions would open the gates. The only chance was to fight at Marathon before the Persians could land more troops or sail around Cape Sunion to attack Athens from the west. Callimachus voted to attack. The Athenians marched. 9,000 Athenian hoplites, 1,000 Plataeans. Plataea had been Athens' ally since 519 BC. They didn't hesitate. The combined Greek force reached Marathon and took position in the foothills near the sanctuary of Heracles. They blocked both exits from the plain. The Persians couldn't move inland without going through them. Athens sent a runner to Sparta. His name was Phaedippides, maybe Philippides. The sources disagree. Herodotus calls him a hemerodrome, a professional long-distance courier. Pheidippides ran from Athens to Sparta, 240 kilometers. He covered it in 2 days. That's the run modern ultramarathoners recreate in the Spartathlon. He delivered the message, Athens needs help. The Persians are here. Come now. The Spartans said yes, but not yet. They were celebrating the Carneia, a religious festival honoring Apollo. Spartan law forbade military campaigns until the moon was full. That was 6 days away. Pheidippides ran back to Athens. The Athenians would fight alone until the Spartans arrived, if they arrived. For 5 days, both armies stared at each other across the plain. The Greeks held the high ground. The Persians controlled the beach and their ships. Neither side wanted to attack first. The Greeks feared Persian cavalry. Open plain fighting meant getting run down by horses. The Persians didn't want to assault uphill into heavy infantry, so they waited. The Greek camp sat protected by trees or stakes. Sources aren't clear which. Every day that passed brought the Spartans closer, but it also gave the Persians time to plan. And on the morning of the 6th day, probably September 12th, but maybe August 12th, everything changed. The signal came from Ionian Greeks serving in the Persian ranks. They climbed trees. They waved. The message was simple. The cavalry is gone. The horses had embarked on ships. Some historians think the Persians were splitting their force. Half would stay and pin the Greeks at Marathon. Half would sail to Athens and attack while the city was undefended. Others think the cavalry was just being re-embarked for transport. Either way, Miltiades saw the opening. No cavalry meant the Persian infantry was vulnerable. Attack now or lose everything. If you value documented ancient military history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Herodotus's histories written around 440 to 430 BC, based on eyewitness accounts, just 40 to 50 years after the battle. Peter Krentz's The Battle of Marathon, published by Yale in 2010, which analyzes archaeological evidence and tactical innovations, and the recent scholarly article, Changing Western Civilization, The Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE in Modern Scholarship, published in May 2025, examining new epigraphic discoveries, including a marathon casualty list from the Erecthias tribe, found in the Aoiaza, Peloponnese. Now back to the information. Miltiades convinced the other generals. Dawn attack. The Greeks formed up in the center of the plain, standard phalanx formation, 8 men deep on the wings. But Miltiades did something nobody expected. He thinned the center to 4 ranks. This stretched the Greek line to match the Persian front. No flanking, no envelopment. The Persians couldn't get behind them. Some modern scholars think this was deliberate tactical genius, weaken the center to strengthen the wings and create a double envelopment. Others think Miltiades just needed to avoid getting outflanked and the rest was luck. Either way, it worked. The Leontis tribe under Themistocles and the Antiochus tribe under Aristides held the center at 4 ranks deep. The other tribes formed the wings at 8 ranks deep, Plataeans on the left. Athenians in the center and right. The Persian and Saka troops, their best fighters, massed in their own center. Standard Persian tactic, push through the middle, roll up the wings. They were probably 10 men deep, maybe more. Miltiades gave the signal. One source says he just shouted, "At them." The Greeks advanced. Herodotus says they ran the whole distance to the Persian lines. Most historians now think they marched most of the way and only charged the final 200 meters. Either way, it was unprecedented. Greek hoplites didn't run in formation. The phalanx relied on cohesion. One man breaks ranks, and the whole formation collapses. But Miltiades knew that a running charge reduced the time exposed to Persian arrows. Less time in the arrow storm meant fewer casualties. The hoplites hit the Persian line like a bronze wave. Each man carried a hoplon shield, a meter wide, covered in bronze, weighing 7 to 8 kilograms. Behind the shield wall, they thrust with spears 2.5 meters long. The full panoply weighed up to 15 kilograms. Foreigners called them men of bronze, men clad in iron. The Persians had lighter armor, wicker shields, shorter spears, bows. The Persian infantry was built for skirmishing and maneuver, not close quarters slugging matches with heavy infantry. The collision was brutal. The Greek center buckled exactly as the Persians expected. The Persian and Saka troops in the middle drove forward. They pushed through the 4-rank line. The center gave ground, but the Greek wings held. The 8-rank formations on the flanks crashed into the Persian flanks and routed them completely. The Persian wings broke, started running for the ships. That's when the Greek wings pivoted inward. They wheeled to hit the Persian center from both sides. The Persian command structure fell apart. Soldiers in the center suddenly had Greeks attacking from 3 directions. Panic spread. The disciplined Persian push turned into a chaotic scramble for the beach. The Greeks pursued. The fighting moved to the ships. This is where Callimachus died, the war archon who cast the deciding vote to fight. He fell during the pursuit, according to Herodotus. The Persians were trying to board their ships. The Greeks grabbed ships, tried to drag them onto the beach, fire them, capture them. 7 Persian ships were destroyed or captured. The rest of the Persian fleet got away. They sailed around Cape Sunion heading for Athens. The plan was still alive. Hit the city while the army was 42 kilometers away at Marathon. But Miltiades read the move. He force-marched his men back to Athens. They covered the distance the same day. Some historians doubt this. They think the Greeks would have taken time to honor and bury their dead first and marched back the next morning. But Herodotus says same day and the timeline works. The hoplites arrived in Athens before the Persian fleet. When Datis saw the Greek army already positioned at Phaleron, he didn't land. His men had just been slaughtered at Marathon. Morale was destroyed. He sailed back to Asia. The first Persian invasion of Greece was over. The butcher's bill told the story. Herodotus counted 6,400 dead Persians on the field. That number might be inflated for propaganda. Robinson calls it political spin doctoring. But even if the real number was half, that it was still a massacre. The Greeks lost 192 Athenians, 11 Plataeans, 203 total. That's a casualty ratio of 30-1 if you believe Herodotus. Even conservative estimates put it at 15-1 or better. The Athenian dead were cremated on the battlefield, breaking with tradition. Normally, Athens buried war dead in the Kerameikos cemetery with markers, but Marathon was different. The 192 who fell got a burial mound raised right where they fought, the Soros. The Greeks hadn't built burial mounds like this since the 7th century BC. Some scholars think it was a deliberate echo of Homer. The Iliad describes mounds for fallen heroes. Marathon got the same honor. Demetrios Philios excavated the mound in 1884. Valerios Stais dug again in 1890 and 1891. They found exactly what Herodotus described, a thick layer of ash, charred bone, mass cremation. The mound stands 12 meters tall, 50 meters diameter. You can see it from across the plain. The Plataean dead got their own smaller tumulus, 3 meters high, found and excavated by Spiridon Marinatos in 1970. Multiple bodies inhumed rather than cremated. Both mounds sit in parkland today. The Spartans arrived at Marathon the day after the battle, 2,000 hoplites. They'd marched as soon as the moon was full. They toured the battlefield, saw the Persian dead, congratulated the Athenians, then marched home. They'd missed the fight, but the message was clear. Athens could stand alone if it had to. Athens celebrated. They'd beaten the greatest empire on earth. Democracy worked. Citizen soldiers defending their own land could defeat professional armies serving a king. The psychological impact rippled through Greece. If Athens could win at Marathon, then Greek independence was possible. The victory memorials went up everywhere. At Delphi, the Athenians built a treasury from Marathon spoils. Pausanias says so. Some archaeologists argue the treasury predates the battle. Others say Pausanias was right. A limestone base next to the treasury definitely held Marathon dedications. The inscriptions survive. Athens also set up a victory column on the plain itself. Fragments exist in the Marathon Archaeological Museum. A casualty list was inscribed on stone. The 192 names of the Athenian dead organized by tribe. Pausanias saw it near the Soros. A new fragment from the Arctius tribe was found in the Peloponnese and published recently. Physical proof of who died that day. Athens minted new tetradrachm coins. The ones before Marathon showed Athena in a plain helmet. After Marathon, the helmet got a wreath and a crescent moon. Seltman argued the crescent referenced the Spartans waiting for the full moon. Cry pushed back, saying the crescent was too small and unobtrusive to be significant. And the debate continues. The painted stoa in Athens got a massive mural of the battle, probably commissioned by Cimon, Miltiades' son. The painting showed Miltiades in the front rank urging soldiers forward. Aeschines says Miltiades wanted his name on it, but Athens refused. They painted him anonymous in the line. The mural is lost now, but ancient sources describe it in detail. Miltiades didn't get to enjoy his glory long. The year after Marathon, he convinced Athens to give him 70 ships for an expedition against Paros. He claimed he'd capture the island and get rich. The campaign failed. He was wounded. Gangrene set in. Athens put him on trial for deceiving the people. He was too sick to defend himself. They fined him 50 talents. He died from the infected wound before he could pay. His son Cimon paid the debt. That's the hard edge under the legend. Marathon was real. The victory was real. But so was politics. So was infection. So was death from a wound that wouldn't heal. Miltiades saved Athens in September 490 BC. By 489 BC, he was dead, and Athens had already moved on. But what Miltiades proved at Marathon changed warfare forever. The phalanx worked. Heavy infantry in tight formation with overlapping shields and long spears could beat light infantry and archers if you got to close range. The running charge minimized arrow casualties. The double envelopment, accidental or planned, destroyed a numerically superior force. Military academies still study the tactics. The lessons hold. The Persians learned too, or should have. At Marathon, they treated Greek heavy infantry as a minor threat. Big mistake. When Xerxes, Darius' son, invaded Greece 10 years later with hundreds of thousands of troops, he still didn't recruit Greek-style hoplites. Egypt and Ionia both had experienced heavy infantry. Xerxes didn't use them. Maybe he didn't trust them after the revolts. Maybe his generals didn't understand what happened at Marathon. Either way, Xerxes repeated his father's error. At Plataea in 479 BC, the Greeks crushed the Persian army again. Same tactics, heavier armor, better training, disciplined formation, the phalanx won. Marathon didn't just save Athens, it saved the idea of Athens. Democracy was 10 years old in 490 BC. Cleisthenes had reformed the government around 500 BC. Before that, Athens had tyrants, Hippias and his father, Pisistratus. When Hippias got kicked out, democracy was fragile, new, untested. If the Persians had won at Marathon, they would have reinstalled Hippias as a puppet king. Democracy would have died in its crib. Instead, it survived. And 10 years later, Athens built the fleet that won at Salamis, built the Parthenon, produced Aeschylus and Sophocles and Euripides, created the foundation of Western philosophy and theater and political thought. None of that happens if Datis wins at Marathon. None of it happens if Miltiades doesn't convince Callimachus to attack. None of it happens if 10,000 citizen soldiers don't hold formation during that running charge. The legend of the Marathon run, the messenger collapsing after announcing victory, probably never happened. Herodotus never mentions it. He's writing 30 to 40 years after the battle, talking to eyewitnesses. If a herald died dramatically after running from Marathon to Athens, Herodotus would have included it. He doesn't. The story first appears 500 years later in Plutarch's essay on the glory of Athens. Plutarch says the runner was named Thursippus, or Euclides, not Phaedippides. Lucian, writing in the 2nd century AD, names him Philippides and adds the dying speech. Rejoice, we have won, then death. Robert Browning's 1879 poem Phaedippides mixed all the versions together and added creative details. The modern marathon was born from Browning's poem and nationalist pride. When Greece hosted the first modern Olympics in 1896, they wanted a race honoring Greek history. Michel Brial proposed the marathon, 25 miles from Marathon to Athens. The race was a sensation. Spyridon Louis, a Greek water carrier, won in 2 hours 58 minutes 50 seconds. The crowd went insane. The marathon became Olympic tradition. The distance changed over the years. In 1908 at the London Olympics, they set it at 26.2 miles, so the race could start at Windsor Castle and finish in front of the Royal Box at the stadium. That distance stuck, 26.2 miles, 42.195 kilometers. It has nothing to do with the actual historical distance from Marathon to Athens. Well, that's closer to 40 kilometers by the coastal route, or 34 kilometers over the mountains. The real Phaedippides, if we trust Herodotus, ran from Athens to Sparta and back, 480 kilometers total. In 3 days, that's the Spartathlon Ultramarathon. That's the historically accurate race. But it's less romantic than dying after announcing victory. So the legend eclipsed the reality. The same thing happened with the battle itself. Over time, Marathon became a symbol. Greeks fighting for freedom against Eastern tyranny, citizen soldiers versus imperial armies, democracy versus autocracy, Western civilization's first great victory. All of that is true in broad strokes, but it flattens the details. It ignores that Miltiades had been a tyrant himself. It ignores that Athens had submitted to Persia back in 507 BC by giving earth and water to Artaphernes. It ignores that plenty of Greek cities stayed neutral or sided with Persia. It ignores that the Persians weren't cartoon villains. Mardonius installed democratic reforms in Ionia after crushing the revolt. History is messy. Marathon was a real battle fought by real men for complicated reasons. Athens wanted to protect its independence and avoid destruction. Persia wanted to punish rebellion and secure its western frontier. Both sides had legitimate interests. Both sides fought brutally. One side won. The other side sailed home and came back 10 years later with a bigger army. But the tactical lessons are clean. Miltiades took a force half the size of the enemy and won decisively. He used terrain, chose the moment to attack, modified the standard phalanx formation to match the enemy front, coordinated the wings to envelop after the center engaged, pursued aggressively to maximize enemy casualties, then force marched back to Athens to deny the Persians their secondary objective. Every decision was correct. Every risk paid off. If Miltiades had waited for the Spartans, the Persians might have sailed to Athens first. If he'd attacked with the cavalry on the field, the Greek wings would have been routed by mounted archers. If he'd kept the standard 8-rank formation across the whole line, the Persians would have flanked and surrounded him. If he'd pursued too far at the beach, more Greeks would have died, and the march back to Athens would have been impossible. The margin between victory and disaster was razor thin. Miltiades threaded every needle. The men who fought that day were farmers and craftsmen and merchants. They owned their own armor, served in the phalanx as civic duty, fought next to neighbors and cousins and childhood friends. The hoplite shield protected the man to your left. You trusted the man to your right to protect you. Break that trust, and everyone dies. Hold formation, and you're nearly unstoppable against lighter troops. They charged into arrow fire, watched friends go down, kept moving, hit the Persian line at full sprint, fought hand to hand with spears and swords, saw the center buckle, held the wings, turned inward when the Persian flanks broke, pursued through dust and blood and chaos to the ships, then marched 42 kilometers back to Athens in armor that weighed 15 kilograms. Same day. The 192 who didn't make it home got burned on the field. Their ashes went into the great mound, names carved in stone, honored every year after. The Soros became a pilgrimage site. Generals visited before campaigns. Athletes stopped there before races. The modern marathon starts at the mound. 40,000 runners pass it every November during the Athens Marathon. Excavations in 1884 and 1970 confirmed what Herodotus wrote. Ash layer, charred human bone, fragments of burned wood from the funeral pyre, black figure pottery shards, everything consistent with mass cremation in late September 490 BC. No elaborate grave goods, no weapons, just the bones and the earth and the stone. The simplicity makes it more powerful. These men saved their city. The city buried them where they fell. The Plataean mound tells a different story. Inhumation, not cremation. Multiple skeletons. 11 men if you trust Herodotus. A smaller mound, less prominent. But Plataea never forgot. 1,000 men marched to Marathon when Athens called. 11 didn't come back. Athens never forgot either. When Thebes destroyed Plataea in 427 BC, Athens gave Plataean refugees citizenship and land. The Marathon alliance held for 200 years. The battlefield itself is still there. The plain of Marathon. The mountains behind where the Greeks formed up. The beach where the Persians landed. The swamps to the north where fleeing Persians got bogged down and cut down. The Soros rising from the middle ground. The small stream called Charadra that probably ran with blood that afternoon. Modern Marathon is a town now. Beach resorts, hotels, the archaeological museum. But you can still see the shape of the land. Stand where Miltiades stood and look across the plain. See what he saw. The Persian camp on the beach. The open ground in between. The calculation he must have made. Attack now with everything we have, or lose everything waiting for help that might not arrive in time. He attacked. It worked. And that moment, that choice, ripples forward through 2,500 years. Because if Marathon falls, then Athens falls. If Athens falls, then Salamis never happens. Plataea never happens. The Persian Empire absorbs Greece. The Parthenon never gets built. Greek philosophy develops under Persian rule or doesn't develop at all. Democracy becomes a failed experiment. Western civilization grows from different roots, or doesn't grow at all. That's too much weight to put on one battle. History doesn't hinge on single moments. Except sometimes it does. Marathon was one of those times. The outnumbered Greeks won when they should have lost. Tactical brilliance and courage and luck combined. The Persian Empire, which had never lost a major land battle in Europe, got stopped cold. The myth that Persia was invincible shattered. 10 years later, Xerxes invaded with overwhelming force. He wanted to finish what his father started. Conquer Greece permanently, avenge Marathon. His army numbered in the hundreds of thousands. His fleet had over 1,000 ships. He built a bridge across the Hellespont, marched through Thrace and Macedonia and Thessaly, fought the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, took the pass, burned Athens. But the Greek fleet, built with silver from the Laurian mines that Athens started exploiting after Marathon, crushed the Persian navy at Salamis. Xerxes went home, left Mardonius with the army. The Greeks destroyed that army at Plataea. The second invasion failed just like the first, and Persia never seriously threatened Greece again. None of that happens without Marathon. The victory proved resistance was possible, gave Athens the confidence and prestige to build the fleet, united enough Greek cities to fight together, created the template for how to beat Persian infantry, showed that free men defending their homes could outlast professional soldiers serving an autocrat. The ancient writers understood this. Herodotus made Marathon central to his narrative, the first major Greek victory over Persia, the turning point. Later, historians inflated it further, made it the battle that saved Western civilization. That's rhetoric, but it's not entirely wrong. What gets lost in the legend is how close it was. 5 days of waiting, one decision by Callimachus, one tactical gamble by Miltiades, one running charge that could have broken apart in the arrow storm, one center that held just long enough for the wings to do their work, one pursuit that wasn't so reckless it left the Greeks unable to march back to Athens, one afternoon where everything had to go exactly right, and somehow did. The Persians didn't make obvious mistakes. They landed where their cavalry could operate. They waited for an opening. When the Greeks attacked, they fought hard. Their center drove forward exactly as planned, but the wings collapsed faster than expected. The command structure broke, and once the rout started, nothing could stop it. 6,400 dead if you trust Herodotus. Thousands more if you count the ones who drowned in the swamps or got cut down running to the ships. For Athens, it was total victory. For Persia, it was a shocking defeat, but not a strategic disaster. They lost one expedition, they'd send another. Darius started planning immediately. Then Egypt revolted in 486 BC. Darius died while preparing to march on Egypt. His son Xerxes crushed the Egyptian revolt, then turned his attention back to Greece. Bigger army, better planning. Marathon had taught Persia that Greece was dangerous. Xerxes would make sure the next invasion didn't fail. But Marathon bought Greece 10 years. 10 years to prepare. 10 years for Athens to become a naval power. 10 years for alliances to form. When Xerxes came in 480 BC, he faced a united Greek resistance with a powerful fleet. Not a collection of fractious city-states with no coordination. Marathon made that possible. It also made Miltiades a hero, temporarily. His fall was swift. The Paros expedition in 489 BC failed. Athens turned on him, fined him 50 talents. He died from his wound before paying. His enemies got the last word. But his son Cimon became one of Athens' great generals and statesmen. Commissioned the painted Stoa mural celebrating Marathon, kept his father's memory alive. The men who fought at Marathon became legendary. The Marathon fighters, they got special status in Athens. First seats at the theater, honors at festivals. When they died, their names got added to the tribal casualty lists. The collective memory of that day shaped Athenian identity for generations. And now, 2.5 millennia later, we still remember. The Marathon race, the burial mound, the legend of Phidippides, the story of the impossible victory. Most of it is mythology built on a real foundation, but that foundation holds. September 490 BC, Marathon Plain. 10,000 Greeks beat 25,000 Persians. 192 Athenians died. 11 Plataeans died. 6,400 Persians died. The numbers are in Herodotus. The burial mound is still there. The archaeological evidence confirms the battle. What we can't know is the fear, the exhaustion. The moment when the charge started and every man had to choose to keep formation or break. The impact when bronze met bronze. The noise, the dust, the blood, the chaos of the center buckling. The relief when the wings held. The pursuit to the beach, grabbing ships, fighting in the surf. Callimachus dying. The march back to Athens with no sleep. Reaching the city walls just before the Persian fleet appeared. Watching Datis sail away. The realization that they'd won. They'd actually won. That's the story under the legend. Ordinary men in extraordinary circumstances, making the right choices. Miltiades seeing the opening when the cavalry embarked, convincing the other generals, thinning the center to match the Persian front, launching the running charge. The hoplites holding formation through arrow fire, hitting the Persian line hard enough to engage before their lighter armor became a liability. The wings routing the Persian flanks, pivoting inward, destroying the Persian center, pursuing without losing cohesion, stopping the pursuit in time to make the march back, reaching Athens before the Persian fleet, denying Datis his secondary objective. Every link in that chain had to hold, every decision had to be right, and somehow they were. That's the miracle of Marathon. Not divine intervention, not impossible odds overcome by magic, just tactical brilliance and discipline and courage and timing, the right men in the right place making the right calls, and in the soil of the Soros, 12 meters of earth and ash and bone mark where 192 of them paid the full price. The mound stands there now, as it stood the day after the battle when the survivors heaped earth over the funeral pyre. 2,500 years, empires risen and fallen, Athens conquered and freed and conquered again, democracy crushed and revived across centuries. But the mound stays, the evidence stays, the names carved in stone stay. 192 Athenians, 11 Plataeans. They stopped the Persian Empire when everyone expected Greece to fall. They proved democracy could fight. They gave Athens 10 years to build a fleet that would save Greece again at Salamis. They died on a September afternoon in 490 BC, defending a fragile new idea, government by citizens, freedom to choose, the right to say no to tyranny. That's what was actually at stake at Marathon. Not abstract concepts, not the preservation of Western civilization, that's retrofitted glory. And what was at stake was Athens' right to govern itself. To not have Hippias reinstalled as a Persian puppet, to not watch the democratic reforms of Cleisthenes get undone, to not become another Eretria, burned and enslaved and erased. The men fighting in that phalanx understood exactly what defeat meant. They'd seen what Persia did to rebels. Miletus sacked, Eretria enslaved, the Ionian cities crushed. If they lost at Marathon, the same would happen to Athens. Temples burned, population enslaved, democratic government abolished, Persian garrisons installed. The experiment ends, so they fought, they held formation, they trusted the men beside them. They charged into arrow fire because staying at range meant dying slower. They hit the Persian line and pushed through pain and fear and exhaustion. They pivoted when the plan worked. They pursued when the enemy broke. They marched back when the battle ended. They saved their city. Not with superpowers, not with magic weapons, not with divine aid, with bronze and wood and discipline and sweat and blood and the willingness to die so Athens could live. That's the real story. That's what the evidence shows. That's what the Soros holds. Ash and bone and the truth. Miltiades knew it. Callimachus knew it. The 192 who didn't come home knew it. The 10,000 who survived knew it. Plataea knew it. Athens knew it. And now 2,500 years later, we know it too. Because the mound is still there. The names are still carved. The distance from Marathon to Athens is still 42 kilometers. And the race that honors that day, even if it honors a legend that probably never happened, carries the truth forward anyway. 10,000 citizen soldiers beat 25,000 professional troops, serving the greatest empire on Earth. One afternoon, one plane, one choice to fight instead of wait, one charge that worked, one victory that changed everything. The numbers don't lie. The archaeology doesn't lie. The burial mound doesn't lie. 192 Athenians died at Marathon. 2,000 years later, a German archaeologist dug into the Soros and found exactly what Herodotus said would be there. Ash, bone, fire. The evidence of one afternoon in September 490 BC, when impossible became possible and democracy got its first real test and somehow passed.